Hello, good afternoon everyone. So my name is Samir Binathar and I'm here. So we are going to learn now about letter of credit, another one, like in the previous session, like I explained about transferable PA TIDLC, that was pre-advised transferable irrevocable documentary letter of credit. So now we will see what is TIDLC, transferable irrevocable and documentary letter of credit. So here we will go. So letter of credit. So we are now going for TIDLC. So this is nothing but transferable and irrevocable. Documentary letter of credit. This is one of the types of letter of credit that an intermediary can use between the end buyer and the supplier who is in the possession of the goods as a between the transaction. Okay, so how transferable? Because the intermediary, as per UCP 600, it is mentioned in the letter of credit that it is itself on the face of the LC, it is mentioned transferable. So basically this type of letter of credit is only, all the letter of credits which are transferable are basically only one time transferable. Not two times. Okay, one time transferable means once the LC is issued, it is issued to your bank. Okay, whatever be the bank. Okay, let us say HSBC, and the supplier bank is Bank of China. Okay, and here is the supplier, you are here, the buyer is here. Let us say the buyer's bank is Citibank. Okay, so once the LC was issued, it is one time transferable. So another time it is going to be transferred to the Bank of China. It will be only called DLC, that is documentary letter of credit. It will not have the same name as transferable. You can say DLC or IDLC. So it will be not having, in this place it will be IDLC once it is transferred. Here, when it was prepared by this bank, it was prepared like TIDLC. When it will be transferred, it is not transferred, it was issued from the issuing bank. It was issued, it was prepared here and issued from here. So once it is issued from here, then it is here. When it is here, it is TIDLC. Once it is issued back from here to here, then it will not have this transferable same here. It will be issued as to the accepting bank here as IDLC. That means the supplier or the holder of the position of the supplier who is in the possession of goods, he will not be able to transfer this documentary letter of credit to any other supplier. Okay. So that is why the supplier has to be in the possession of the goods. Okay. Even let us say you are one single agent, one single intermediary agent, but you have got the source of this supplier by another agent. Okay, let us say the agent is here. Okay, let us say you are in India, the supplier is in China. Okay, and the buyer is in USA. Okay, once the buyer's bank, Citibank, has issued for HSBC Bank, once they prepare this documentary letter of credit with a face of transferable name, so once they issue this letter of credit to your bank, HSBC, and after that you need to transfer this transferable irrevocable TIDLC, you need to transfer to the supplier. How you will transfer? You are going to transfer it as only a simple IDLC or say DLC. Okay, when you transfer this, then it will not have the same credit face of PIDLC. It will have the face of the credit has the face of only documentary letter of credit. So when they receive, they cannot, this Bank of China cannot transfer, or this Bank of China or the supplier cannot transfer it to any other supplier or anybody. So he is the end receiver. The way he is the end buyer, he is the end receiver, and you are only the middle controlling buyer seller, that is the agent here. So regarding, as I told, if you have got this supplier's details via another agent, okay, so and this another agent, he wants his commission. So how you will give his commission? And if he says that you need to transfer this to his bank, and he will transfer it to his bank, then there cannot be any deal done, because as per UCP 600, that is Uniform Customs and Practice 600, as per the International Chamber of Commerce rule, the TIDLC is only one time transferable. It cannot be transferable 2 times. So, and basically with the name itself, this is the reason why, as an intermediary, because this is a transferable DLC, because of this rule only, you as an intermediary are able to involve this kind of transaction, because this is a transferable documentary letter of credit. If it was only DLC, which the UCP 600 Uniform Customs and Practice as per International Chamber of Commerce, if they would have advised, no, let us keep only DLC, then the intermediaries would have not been able to come into this business of import and export as a middle controlling buyer or etc. Okay, though there is a chance, if you are doing some private in-house corporate DLC thing as a private trader, that is another case. But here we are not investing any money. So without investing any money, when you are going to involve in this kind of business, then that is why because of this thing, as per UCP 600 ICC rule, you are able to involve in this scenario of all kinds of letter of credit, which is transferable. Without transferable, then you are not there in the business. Only the buyer and the seller they deal both with themselves without any middle controlling buyer. So if there is a middle controlling buyer, then the letter of credit of course has to be transferable, and that transferable is all the time universal, only one time transferable, not 2 times. So if you have sourced about this supplier via another agent, he gave you this supplier's address, so that's why you are able to contact this supplier and secure the goods and provide him, the end buyer. Then if he asks you that he is your friend, let us say he is your friend, and he is also in China. If he asks you that how about his commission, then you have to deal with him separately. Even in the documentary letter of credit, you can specify his name. That is another scenario. But initially, you cannot issue him the LC which you have received. You can only reissue this LC to this supplier, deducting the actual amount here. Let us say it was like for 100,000. The LC was for 100,000 USD, and the supplier cost is 90,000. So what you will do is, when it was issued to you, then you need to prepare another LC. Your bank will prepare another LC for 90,000 USD based on this LC. After they receive this LC in the HSBC bank, after they receive this LC in HSBC bank for 100,000, they will, as per the cost of the supplier, when you specify to the bank that to make another LC, they will prepare the LC for 90,000 and they issue this again. That is final. So the bank will, the supplier's bank will receive for 90,000, and they will inform the supplier that they have received the LC, and the supplier will take care of the work, the remaining part of the delivery of documents, the transportation of the goods, etc., etc. So now the thing is like, the main thing now comes like proof of the goods. Like the buyer can ask you, because this is not pre-advised. The buyer, if insists, now the main thing concern comes for the proof of the goods. If you are new to the buyer can ask you about the proof of the goods. So if he asks for the proof of the goods, why? Because he will ask, of course, not after issuing this TIDLC. He will of course ask, before making the letter of credit, he will of course ask the proof of the goods. Before issuing the LC, he will ask. So when he asks for the proof of the goods, then you can advise him, sir, I will provide the proof of the goods by PPI certificate. What is PPI certificate? I have advised about this thing in another video. You can watch that video. PPI certificate is nothing but policy proof of interest certificate. What this certificate supports is, policy proof of interest certificate is nothing but you have really secured the goods from the supplier. That means you are sure, because this is document. This is a document. Policy proof of certificate is nothing but, it is not just a certificate. It is you distinguish in that certificate about the supplier's name, address, product name, material, everything, what the LC is going to be made of. Okay, LC is going to be made because of the buyer is going to purchase from you, and you return are purchasing from the supplier. So if the buyer asks for the genuinity of the goods, you are not able to provide the proof of the goods, because proof of the goods is nothing about, nobody can go about it. But policy proof of interest certificate is nothing but the genuinity of the goods, which is more reliable than the proof of the goods. Policy proof of interest certificate also distinguishes about the supplier's name, address, material, everything, location, everything. So once you say, sir, if he asks for the genuinity and proof of the goods, then you can ask him to, instead of then you can ask the buyer to open a PA TIDLC. PA TIDLC. So PA TIDLC, once he opens, what happens next is, once the buyer opens PA TIDLC, once the buyer and buyer, okay, and buyer opens, through his bank. Through his bank. Through, let us say his bank, what was his bank? Citibank. And was open PA TIDLC. He opens means like he will advise his bank that he needs to open, because he has a bank account, he has a business bank account with the Citibank, and Citibank knows him. So he will advise the Citibank manager or whatever to that he needs a PA TIDLC to import of some material from a person to one bank. So you are here in India and your bank is HSBC. What the PA TIDLC is nothing but, once they issue this one to HSBC, from Citibank to HSBC, it is nothing but pre-advised. It is in the still pre-advised status. That means it is activated based on a condition. This is activated, this pre-advised credit is activated, the credit inside the PA is activated when it will be activated once you provide PPI certificate. PPI certificate, as I told, like it is policy proof of interest certificate. In this certificate, the supplier of the goods, let us say he has this Bank of China. Okay, so what happens? Once you provide this bank with this PPI certificate, the bank will look and they know about the supplier and his address, supplier name, address, country, phone number, product, material, bank account, everything this bank will come to know. Citibank. Citibank will come to know everything about this supplier. But as per UCP 600, as per UCP 600, this is Uniform Customs and Practice. This is ICC, International Chamber of Commerce. As per this law 600, UCP 600, once the bank receives information from the buyer or seller, from the buyer or say seller, that is your role, right? That is your role, right? So from once they receive, the bank receives, issuing bank receives PPI certificate, they must, and if they have issued the PA TIDLC and they received the PPI certificate, they must have to activate the credit. Which was, let us say the credit was for 100,000. USD. The credit was for 100,000 US dollars. They must have to activate this credit once you provide this PPI certificate. So once the credit is activated, you, because it was transferable PA TIDLC, since the documented rate of credit at your stage was pre-advised transferable documented rate of credit. Once the credit is activated, this pre-advised thing will be gone. I mean, like, because you have already provided the PPI certificate, now there is no pre-advice thing, etc. The bank will have to activate it. They cannot cancel, they cannot deactivate anything like that, because this is as per UCP 600. That's why whenever you make as an intermediary, when you are dealing with the end buyer during the draft contract stage, during the initial stage, and during the end of the contract stage, before the buyer is about to issue the letter of credit, always during the email or facsimile, fax, anything like that, always during the draft contract and before, in all the stages you have to mention like bank, UCP 600 and ICC, Incoterms and credit, all these things you have to basically mention in the email style in your letterhead. That while these are all things mentioned, the buyer is not going to cheat in any ways, because you have already discussed with the buyer during the draft contract and before the after the draft contract, before making the LC, when you provide him the final contract on which he is going to issue the LC through his bank based on the final contract and draft contract. In all those things you have to always remember to mention UCP 600, and if it is he is wanting to have the proof of products, then you mention the PPI certificate as per PA TIDLC. All these things you have with you as a proof, so the buyer is not going to play any game and the bank is not going to play any game. And the bank, whatever the bank is, I am not counting if it is a large bank, anything like that. I mean, even if it is a small bank, they cannot play any game as per UCP 600. So that's why you better deal with the large banks. Even if it is a small bank, it is not a problem. You have to mention in your draft contract, final contract stage, and you ask the buyer to always you check with the style of letter of credit he is preparing, and he made that UCP 600 should be mentioned. If it is not mentioned, then you never accept the deal. Okay, because as per your draft contract and final contract things, and as per your email and facsimile, fax things, etc., the way you have dealt with him, if he is not going to put UCP 600, etc., in the letter of credit, then of course you are not going to accept the deal, because once if it is released and you are going to accept in your bank, then there can be any kind of issues, and maybe there can be problems. So always, even if it is a bank, it should be mentioned in the letter of credit UCP 600 and Incoterms, the rules, things, etc., as per the International Chamber of Commerce rules. Okay, because you are intermediary and you are dealing with the end buyer and supplier from different parts of the world. You have to be careful with that one. So it is not difficult if the starting thing, everything has come to in a proper way and the buyer is okay with that one, then of course there is not going to be a problem. We just have to be very careful in the documentation. So now where were we? We were like here, the Citibank, now when activated, let us say the credit was for 100,000, it was issued as per 100,000, and you have from your supplier the goods for 90,000. Okay, so now the only it is like transferable and pre-advice. These both things have been done, because now it is only one time transferable. Now you are going to transfer the remaining part of the funds which was issued. Your transfer, you are going to issue, not transfer, you are going to issue this DLC to this bank. Your bank, HSBC, will issue DLC, not from here, I will take from here, will issue the DLC for 90,000. See, this is only DLC, this is not transferable. Now it is issued to him. He cannot transfer from his place to any other company or supplier or anything like that. So that is why he is only in the position of the goods. You are going to transfer to him only. And even while I am telling this, if you have any other sourcing intermediary, like this supplier address has been given to you by another person, as I told in the previous, before striking of the board, this one I told, like if there is another person in the middle from between you and the supplier, you cannot make the LC on his name again, because this LC once issued to your bank, you can only issue, your bank can only issue to another bank, be it one person. It has to be supplier. It should not be any other person. If there is any other person involved, because you have sourced the supplier address and name, details, etc., via some XYZ person, let us say this person. So if this person is creating problem, then you try to negotiate with him outside with some kind of promissory note or something like that, and you ask him to safeguard the deal, and you try to gain his trust and make a deal with him with based on his name written in the DLC in a way like you are going to provide to the sourcing intermediary, etc., his commission payments, etc. So he will step back and he will not be coming into the deal. So he will be satisfied. So once the deal is completed and this person, once they transfer the goods to the port, and from the port, once they receive the delivery documents, they will provide delivery documents to your HSBC bank. From this bank, the documents will come to your bank. Once the documents are come to your bank, based on the bank status, if it is a big bank, then they will issue right away the funds to him. And once your bank receives this one, then the credit will be issued to you, whatever your commissions were. Hence, because the banks they see the documents, so if the documents are as per LC and they are big banks, they know what to do, so they will do that one. So that is called a USANS LC, that is site LC. So that is nothing but every LC when issued, you have to be careful. If it is if you have to provide the genuinity or proof of the goods, then you advise to your end buyer that you can provide a PPI certificate which is valid, and which is valid for the banks, everything like that. So when this comes into play, then the bank will of course once received the address of the details of the supplier, they cannot cancel or deactivate. So always one more thing to remember is, when even if it is a TIDLC, transferable irrevocable documentary letter of credit only, or else like it is a PA TIDLC, which is pre-advised. We started this class based on only TIDLC. Okay, based on only TIDLC we started. So if the buyer did not ask, the proof of the goods, then what you do is, if the buyer asked his bank, which was Citibank, and he asked his Citibank to open a TIDLC. Okay, when it is TIDLC, and you have confirmed with the bank, with the buyer, and based on some negotiation and part of contract and final contract, everything, that is what it was decided for the TIDLC. Once it was decided by the buyer, then he thought in his mind, then okay, I am going to issue a TIDLC. That means he did not ask you to provide any proof of the goods, right? That is why once after you have given him the final contract, he went to the bank, his bank, and he issued this TIDLC. That means he did not thought, and he did not, even if he has thought, but he relied whatever it is the case, and he opened this TIDLC. That means you do not have to provide any PPI certificate to this bank or to the buyer. Okay, so if the buyer insists to proof of products, then you ask him, okay sir, I will provide the proof of products, PPI certificate and ask him to open a PA TIDLC, that is pre-advised. That means this was basically, he did not come until this stage. The buyer did not come until to the bank and he already made the TIDLC. He was still in the contract stage. You are in the contract stage, okay? So once you deal with him, if he asks for proof of products, if he asks for proof of products, then if you do not ask him PA TIDLC and you try to provide him PPI certificate without PA TIDLC, that means he did not open PA TIDLC at his bank, right? If he did not open PA TIDLC in his bank and he asked you proof of product and you directly provide him proof of PPI certificate, that means he will come to know address of the supplier and the product. So what he will do now? He will leave you and he will directly go to the supplier. And he will contact the supplier, not the same day, maybe next day or after 1 week. He will leave you, and because you have provided him PPI certificate, based on what? Based on nothing. He just asked you, and because you did not have that much of experience, and because you were new, you thought maybe like the buyer, in case maybe he will agree with me, instead of making a PA TIDLC, and this is going. And the buyer can sometimes be, they can be smart. They will say that I'm anyhow issuing like irrevocable documentary letter of credit. Why you worry about this PA TIDLC, everything like that? Never go in that kind of scenario, because if he asks you genuinity of the products, anyhow you are going to give the PPI certificate. PPI certificate, or like if you are even going to give some kind of information about supplier, he will jump to him. So you ask the buyer if he is going to give any IDLC or CIDLC, confirmed irrevocable documentary letter of credit, or irrevocable documentary letter of credit, or TIDLC, etc. You ask him to open a PA TIDLC because you are going to provide PPI certificate. You have to be very careful about it, because after all this thing, if you are going to just provide a PPI certificate without without getting a PA TIDLC to your bank, then this buyer will jump to supply, leaving you nowhere. And if you have sourced the supplier from, let us say, 2 or 3 agents in the middle, you source from him, he source from him, he source from him, he source from him. Sometimes can happen if it is a large deal, something, but better you deal directly with supplier, or like at least mostly 1 or 2 people in the row, not too many people in the string contract. It will be like a string contract. It will be little bit difficult when there are some people, some intermediaries who have their little bit of different thinking. So what will happen is, you always ask the buyer to provide a PA TIDLC. If he is going to issue first the PA TIDLC, then you provide to the bank policy proof of interest certificate, because once the bank receives policy proof of interest certificate, the buyer cannot do anything. As per UCP 600 law, the bank must activate the PA TIDLC, must activate the credit. Because I have just now spoken about this thing again, but I am still little bit deeper. I am trying to explain. Now the bank must activate the credit, and the credit will come to your bank, which was HSBC. The credit will be activated to your bank, and you can transfer the letter of credit, which is now only acting as a not as a TIDLC, PA TIDLC. Now it will be only the remaining part which will be transferred, because it was transferable. So that means like every letter of credit is only one time transferable, because it was at your bank already. Now you are going to transfer, it is only one time. When it is one time, that means you are going only transferring this. Then when the bank receives this bank will receive DLC. That is nothing but documentary letter of credit the supplier's bank will receive, and the part sum of that one which will be received is 90,000, because $1 lakh was here which your bank received, and you source the products from this supplier at the basis of 90,000. So this is what it happens. So this is the case. If it is a TIDLC, and if it is just a TIDLC, and the buyer is asking like, okay, now I want proof of the products, then you ask him to that you can provide PPI certificate. Once on the PPI certificate, the bank will come to know that one, address, everything, but the bank still has to activate the credit. So initially when you make these things, check with the buyer that how you are going to how it is going to be. So everything from the start of the contract, start of draft contract, everything you have to be very careful while dealing with the supplier and end buyer. So these all things come into account. So this is the thing. Okay, we'll get back, and for another class I will explain about other types of letter of credit. Thank you.